The voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Day 2 of no speaker vacation in the House of Representatives, and the children, yes, the children are running amok. In fact, McCarthy allies they're talking revenge. They're plotting against their other Republicans. They're going to get them back. You wait and see. And look, I got a bunch of emails today from all the different right-wing MAGA groups with Matt Gaetz saying, I'm under attack. Yeah, Matt, you kind of pulled this on yourself. You kind of did the dumb thing that everyone said don't do. You touched the button, you touched the hot stove, and now you're surprised that you're going to get burned. And are you going to get burned? In fact, you're going to get Cawthorned. It is going to happen. If you remember what happened with Madison Cawthorn, remember him? Remember the cautionary tale we talked about him? Lots of dirty laundry. Lots of weird kind of him in bizarre poses with other naked men. There was all kinds of stuff. And this is one of those things where if you live in a glass house, you don't throw stones. Don't do it. You just don't do dumb stuff. So it has begun. Markwayne Mullin, the senator. Now, this is the thing. The House is usually where all this insanity plays itself out. Because it's supposed to. The House is where the rages of the people are supposed to rage. You're supposed to have chaos a little bit. The Senate is where the upper chamber, where the adults are supposed to be. But you had Mark Wayne out today. Oh, Mark Wayne threw the opening salvo in the Cawthorning of Matt Gaetz. Evidently said that Matt Gaetz told him, bragged how he would crush up erectile dysfunction medicine and then snort it and chase it with energy drinks so he could go all night long. I said, this is obviously before he got married. And this is another one of those things where you go, wait a second, you said he had sex with underage women. You can't have sex with an underage girl. You can't. Because it's a crime. It's called rape. That's what that's called. And by you saying that he did, kind of pulls you in. We're in kind of weird territory. So while they're Cawthorning Matt Gaetz, and no one deserves it more than Matt Gaetz, going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Because ultimately, the Republicans want their pound of flesh. They're going to get their revenge. And this is, some people are saying, could this be the end of the party? I don't know. I'm not going that far, but there will be a pie fight. Now, here's the thing. I don't need a Harvard professor to tell me that things are bad. In fact, Daniel Ziblatt, his name is a professor of government at Harvard University. He was quoted in the Washington Post. And look, again, you don't necessarily need to be a Harvard professor. He says, if you want to know what it looks like when democracy is in trouble, this is what it looks like. It should set off alarm bells that something is not right. And look, something has not been right for some time. The fact that we elected a reality TV star as president and then expected him to have plans that he didn't. We expected the Republican Party, to change its spots and not enrich the wealthy and actually do something, anything, for the working class. Things are not right. Now, on the Democratic side, things are right. Joe Manchin said that he would have voted for Kevin McCarthy, which you go, of course you would have, Joe, because that's what you do. But today, the fun, the entertainment, the main talking points all over the right-wing outrage machine has been Trump, Speaker Trump. In fact, Trump, I guess, put out a picture of himself as speaker, which is kind of weird. But Marjorie Trainwreck Green, she threw out a tweet today saying, and this is brilliant. I I want this for her. Now remember when Kevin McCarthy was running for speaker and it took him 15 times to get there? I said, look, I want this for him because I envisioned this coming. Chaos was never not the end result. So I said, look, I want him to wake up every morning with acid reflux and heartburn from knowing he's going to have to wake up and see, the Matt Gaetzes and the rest of the kook caucus. And I want him to go to bed thinking about them, and I want him to have nightmares about them. And during the day, I want them to bump into each other in the hall. And that's what's happened. But now Marjorie Taylor Greene has given me a new hope. I want Donald Trump as speaker. I think it's going to be, it's horrible for democracy, horrible for the country. It's going to be terribly destructive, bad thing. But she tweeted out today, if Trump becomes Speaker of the House chamber will be a Trump rally every day. Have you seen a Trump rally? Have you seen the insanity? Have you seen the craziness? She said it would be the House of MAGA. And here's the thing. If you weren't afraid of what we've been talking about for years now, an authoritarian dictatorship, a King Trump, a MAGA house would bring that. Now, evidently, Trump maybe is going to visit the House Republicans. I haven't gotten the definitive answer yet, but there's a possibility he's going to Capitol Hill, kind of talking. And he said, look, he's not going to be permanent speaker. Might do it for 90 days. He might give it a temporary part-time kind of thing, because that's how Trump does things. That's how Trump rolls. Only problem is, going to have to change some rules. Those 91 indictments, minor impediment. But hey, nothing that the Republicans can't overcome. Now, the weird thing is the not in love with Trump crowd, they're going to have to say yes to him, which means death for them at home. So for me, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let's bring Trump in. Let's make sure that he is speaker. Let's give him the gavel. Let's let him bloviate. Let's let him say all the crazy stuff he's been saying. And maybe the mainstream corporate controlled media, maybe they'll pay attention, because they haven't been to this point. Nothing. And this is the part that bothers me. With all of the violent rhetoric that's been coming out of his mouth. There was a piece over at the Washington Post today, where he's saying, look, Trump's talking about extrajudicial killings, that hasn't been covered by the mainstream media. Talking about, he talked about, when people loot, that, we should be able to just shoot people. And, we should be shooting people and doing all this stuff. And the mainstream media didn't pick up on it. There was nothing. It just went. And I'll be honest, I let it go too, because I'll be honest, every crazy thing he says, I have to decide whether, is this something worth amplifying? Is this something worth giving attention to? Like a child. I mean, this is like a child. Do you give bad behavior attention? And our media has always given him all of the attention his ego has ever craved. And the thing is he's getting further and further off the fringe. He's getting further and further off the beaten path to get that attention, to get that fix. For instance, he was interviewed by Hassan over at MSNBC. And this phrase he's used a couple of times. All these immigrants coming in, nobody knows where they're coming from. Nobody knows if they were coming from prisons or mental health institutions or insane asylums. Nobody knows anything. Nobody knows if they're terrorists. Nobody knows anything. Playing on people's fears. He says, it's very sad for our country. It's poisoning the blood of our country. It's poisoning the blood of our country. And look, rightly, everyone who paid attention to this is thinking, holy moly, that sounds a lot like 1930s Hitler rhetoric. Because it is. Now understand, Trump says he's a student, kept the book right in his bedstand, evidently. Kept speeches Hitler's speeches in his nightstand. I don't know that that's nighttime reading. Maybe in Trump world. But we're in this place where how do we handle this? Somebody who clearly wants violence, clearly wants the destruction of our social norms, the destruction of our institutions for their power, for their control, for their worldview. Democracy be damned. That Constitution that they talk about that they've never read, that be damned. It's about their power and their control. And ultimately it comes down to wealth and money. So, the more I look at this, the more I'm concerned. And while I'm kind of trying to make light of a Speaker Trump, because I think it would maybe be a shock to our system, maybe Americans would start to pay attention, maybe put down the American Idol and Cheetos or whatever it is that the bread and circus of today is, and maybe start paying attention to the reality that democracy is under attack. That the world that we grew up in, the America I grew up loving and wanting to defend, that America is going away quickly. And as the Harvard professor says, right now, something's wrong. This is what it looks like when democracy is in trouble. This is it. Alarm bells should be going off in every freedom-loving American's head, because something is not right. And what's not right is we've got a Republican Party that seems to be in the pocket of a foreign dictator, seem to be doing the bidding of Putin, and social norms be damned. History be damned. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. I got a lot to get to, a lot to talk about. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
And look, with all of this chaos, we still haven't even talked about what's going to happen down the road. Government shutdowns coming quickly. What 42 days now? We got 43 days until the next one, the next fear, and we've got no functional government. Nothing. Let's go to the phones. Got Steve on line one from Chicago. Steve, how are you today?
Yes, I'm fine. Well, in this case, it's Steve from Dallas. I'm in Dallas on business, and for anybody who doesn't travel very much, I mean, in this day and age, I would suggest getting out and about and seeing exactly what it is that's going on in your country, because this is very much a country that's divided. Every time I come down here to Dallas or Houston, I go out to Arizona, a few other places where I do business. Yeah, it's night and day from Chicago. Or when I do business in New York, and I have an office in D.C., it is amazing the way in which people here think about what's going on in the world, because you would think that Joe Biden was, Mao Zedong reincarnated if you talk to them. I mean, they literally believe that, the federal government is going to kick in their door any day and take all of their guns. And that, that their kid's slot at Texas A&M and UT is going to be taken by some Venezuelan immigrants. I mean, this is the level of crazy. But, we didn't get here overnight. I mean, I would argue that, you can go back further, but in terms of the modern age, this starts with Ronald Reagan and the whole, government is the problem, not the solution. And this is the birth of the modern neocons. And then they had their run until they crashed the economy in 2008 and 2009, at which point, the populist part of the movement of conservatives in this country said, okay, who can we trust? We can't trust these people anymore. I mean, they were promising us trickle-down economics. I'm still waiting for my money to trickle down.
Yep.
And then they crashed the economy. Well, along comes the populists, the Tea Party nuts.
The Buchanan wing.
The Freedom Caucus. Yeah, exactly. So these are the wackos who you needed as a substitute for the people whose policies had failed. Of course, we, the sensible human beings on the planet, we're always saying the same thing with regard to neocon trickle-down economics. It was ridiculous, and it was never going to work. And why? Because we actually have history to show us that it doesn't work. When the robber barons of the 19th century made their fortunes, and then, by the way, many of those fortunes were greater than anything that exists today when you control for inflation, they did not share that wealth. This idea that we're simply just going to share wealth. No, instead it was a race to the bottom, just like it's been a race to the bottom since the Reagan era. So now you have the populists, and of course, they're a Frankenstein monster at the Republican Party. They're not the majority of Republicans, but they're enough of the Republican Party to where they hold sway over the party. And so now sensible Republicans can't govern, if there is such a thing. I would argue that, okay, I don't agree with Republicans, but there are some of them that I could work with. I could work with Liz Cheney. I don't contend that I have anything in common with her in terms of policy, or Mitt Romney, or Adam Kinzinger, or others, but they were sane human beings who in the end would say that America comes first, and that that politics needs to end at the shore, and no matter what else happens in this country, that the survival of the republic comes first, before any human being, before any party, before any ideology. Today, no. Donald Trump would be willing to burn down this country as long as he could be king of the ashes, and that's what we've come to. And unfortunately, it's going to take sensible people in the Republican Party, because I don't think we as Democrats or progressives, liberals, however you want to label us, we can't save them. They've got to save themselves. We can hope to get as many independents on our side with regard to elections and policies, but they need to save their own party, because, as I've said before, this country does need two functional parties if it's going to survive.
Yep.
Because I don't agree with much of what Republicans have to say, but I do think that they represent a large cohort of voters in this country. And if those people don't feel that they're represented in government, that's very much problematic with regard to the potential for instability in society. So, yes, I mean, they need to save their party. I don't know exactly how they do it, other than remaking it, saying, you know what, we just divest ourselves of the wackos, the Matt Gaetz, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Lauren Boebert, and yes, of course, the Donald Trumps, and we go back to being the party that we used to be. At least to the degree that we were common sense people, and we knew that that destroying the country isn't a victory. That's like saying, you know what, you can win a nuclear war. No, you can't win a nuclear war.
No, I've said for years, Republicans, take your party back somewhere near the sane line. It's going to come back. It comes down to the voters. It comes down to people not buying into the kind of rhetoric. But sadly, what Trump says appeals to to a large number of voters in this country. The kind of misogyny, the kind of homophobia, the kind of nationalism, that kind of stuff sells in Republican circles.
Yeah, well, our problem is that.
Go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
I would argue some on the left as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have our fringe elements as well. And to be perfectly frank, going into 2024, given how important an election it is, if I had my way, I would, put a muzzle on some of them. Just be quiet. You're not helping us in this election cycle. Okay, I understand that that we're a party of a lot of voices, but we don't want to give them ammunition, because we've got some fringe nuts, and then when they open their mouths, then the Republicans latch onto that, and that becomes the talking point at Fox for a week, when that person does not represent the vast majority of Democrats in this country. And so, yes, we've got to do something about how people assimilate knowledge, because unfortunately, like I said, I travel you can try and talk to these people as if you're using reason and rationality, logic, scientific methodology, asking them to look at research, asking them to look at the scholarship in these fields and the history of it. No. They have their own sources. Some of them are out and outright nuts with regard to where they're getting their information, and they believe this stuff. I mean, I have met people who believe that Donald Trump is still secretly running this country.
I know.
Yeah,
but yet it's Joe Biden's fault for the inflation.
Right, exactly. And I'm like, okay, so in other words, what do you take issue with, and what you then blame Donald Trump? Oh, they get confused on that one. You know, it's hard keeping up with the conspiracies, and I'm actually ashamed of myself that I find myself trying to keep up with this. Okay, so let me see. Donald Trump is going to parachute into onto the White House lawn with JFK Jr., who isn't really dead, and they're going to take power and save the country.
Yeah, because you're down there in Dallas. They were supposed to come back to Dealey Plaza. But, Steve, I appreciate the thoughts, man. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alice on line 2. Alice, how are you today?
Somewhat insane.
So what's on your mind?
Not totally. What I wanted to say is this. We've really got some deep issues here. And as a society, we're going to have to make some very tough decisions. And here's what it comes down to. We have a minority rule by a bunch of, let's just flat out tell it like it is, lunatics who want to do nothing more than to destroy the Constitution, to destroy our nation, and set it up as some sort of weird biblical right-wing fascist paradise kind of deal. And we're going to have to really make some tough decisions, but instead we sit back and go, well, no, we can't do that because that would be against their rights. Obviously, what we need to do is say, okay, these people are right-wing terrorists and throw their hind ends in jail. But we won't do that because we don't want to offend the right wing, because they'll cry and they'll say how they're being picked on because they're Christians or Republicans or white. I mean, that's what it comes down to. But at some point, we're going to have to do this because here's the deal. If we don't, they're going to take over, and I can assure you they're not going to worry about whether it's somebody's constitutional rights or not.
No, you got that right. Appreciate the thoughts, Alice.
So, have a good evening.
No, that's like I you when you stop and think about where we're heading, and you listen to the rhetoric coming out of the right wing spin machine. And I spend a little time every day listening to the outrage factory on the right. And it's all about how horrible Joe Biden is and how everything's his fault. And you get into the real kook stuff. Then Trump's still running things, and it's amazing that we've gotten where we've gotten. And I blame the fact that we have a corporate control of our media that has gotten so large that there's no more local newspapers. There's very little trustable local news anymore. And the stuff that it's all bad. Because the moneyed interests don't want an informed, active, engaged populace. They want what they've got. They want people who are just smart enough to do the jobs, but not smart enough to realize they're getting screwed, and divided and ready to eat each other at every opportunity. Scary, scary stuff. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Sarah Burris is going to be here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1886. That was the day Henry George accepted the nomination to run for mayor of New York on the United Labor Party ticket. In cities across the country, trade unionists met to found state labor parties and to hammer out political platforms for local and state elections. In New York City, ULP advocates issued the Clarendon Hall platform and nominated Henry George as the ULP candidate for the mayoral race. George had gained prominence with the 1879 publishing of his book, Progress and Poverty. In it, he addressed private land ownership as the basis for inequality and advocated for a single tax system. At New York's Cooper Union that evening, where thousands of supporters gathered, George addressed the crowd. He presented the ULP platform of higher wages, shorter hours, better working conditions, government ownership of railroads and communications, and the end to police repression. Burroughs and Wallace described the scene that night in their book, Gotham, A History of New York City to 1898. During his speech, George declared, quote, "This government of New York City, our whole political system is rotten to the core." He argued that politicians had made a trade out of assembling votes and selling them to powerful interests. What business got in return was police protection, lax enforcement of housing and health codes, friendly judges, and fat franchises. To purify the political order, working class voters had to sever ties to all the established parties and choose from their own ranks. For a party that had just been founded weeks before, George came in second. But like its sister organization in Chicago, the New York ULP would split over issues of socialism within a year.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
What amazes me about outbreaks of bribery among high government officials is not just the level of greed involved, but that the take is often so cheesy. For example, there seems to be no end to the ongoing saga of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's peddling his position and prestige to right-wing corporate titans for what? Free rides on their jets, golf outings, and assorted baubles. He's supposed to be an impartial justice, but he consistently supports rich interests who are picking up his tabs. We taxpayers provide $274,000 a year in salary to Thomas. Why wouldn't he buy his own baubles and protect a smidgen of his judicial integrity? Now comes New Jersey's Senator Robert Menendez, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who has been oddly insistent on giving U.S. weaponry and financial aid to Egypt's repressive military dictatorship. Why? Because Menendez has sunk butt deep into influence peddling, using his position to advance Egyptian interests. In exchange, Egyptian agents have blessed him with huge wads of cash, gold bullion, a Mercedes-Benz convertible, and a no-show job for his wife. Oh, they also delivered an air purifier for his home. Seriously? An air purifier? That's a mighty cheap sellout. Yet, what a priceless symbol of the whole stinky deal. Meanwhile, Menendez says that the donations are unrelated to his honest concerns about our Mideast foreign policy. He proudly asserts that his senatorial assistance is just the, quote, normal work of a congressional office. This is Jim Hightower saying, sadly, he's right. Most Senate offices today routinely do official favors for moneyed interest in exchange for millions of dollars in bribes. But that's such an ugly word, so they call the big money payments campaign contributions. Then they get indignant when we call the system corrupt, but that's what it is.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So big news. Got breaking news. This is actual big breaking news. Don't do this very often. Don't do the breaking news. Hey, look at us kind of stuff. But this breaking, that's why I brought in my good friend Sarah Burris. She's a reporter over at rawstory.com, the website. She has a big story. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us. What is the breaking news? What is the big story? What is this momentous? What is this thing?
Hey, so our favorite New York lawyer, Michael Cohen, woke me up from my afternoon nap and said, hey, guess what? Donald Trump dropped his $500 million lawsuit against me. And the thing that is so major about this is Trump has basically been running from a deposition since he filed this lawsuit in April. Like from the very beginning, he filed it in April and he goes, oh, and by the way, we don't really want to do anything with this lawsuit until October. And it's like, that's not how that works. No. Like immediately you go, okay, let's do depositions. Let's go through with all of the court procedure, yada, yada, yada. They didn't want to do anything. And so Trump has kind of spent the last 6-7 months delaying until ultimately that's what happened, is he delayed it until October. Well, now the dude was supposed to give a deposition on Tuesday, And he told the judge in Miami, oh my God, I cannot be there in Miami because I have to be in New York for this civil trial. The civil trials are really important. I have to be there to, uphold my name of my company and my family name and yada, yada, yada. And then he left. So basically it looks like he lied to the judge.
Yeah.
And so Trump was supposed to show up and give his deposition next, I think Monday. And so tonight he was just like, no, I'm dropping it. But Cohen just sent me a text message. He says, as I've said from the beginning, this case was nothing more than a retaliatory intimidation tactic and an attempt to hide from routine discovery procedures confirms as much. This is my favorite part. Mr. Trump's cowardly dismissal spells the end of this latest attempt to deter me from providing truthful testimony against him. Yay. My legal team and I now look forward to turning our full attention to holding Mr. Trump accountable for his latest abuse of the legal system. More to come.
Yeah.
So.
No, this is the thing that gets me. I mean, I remember him filing that. And I remember going, you're going to have to be deposed and there's going to be discovery. It's like yesterday I talked about Giuliani is suing President Biden because Biden said that he's Putin's puppet. Well, okay, now you're suing Biden. So his lawyers they're going to comb through.
Destroy you.
Exactly.
They will destroy him. And that's the thing is like, then you'll end up having all of this information that could prove that Giuliani really was Putin's puppet. Like it could end up working out in Biden's favor.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what happened here with this Cohen case is it's like, dude, Cohen has spent years and years with this man, working with this man. And now suddenly he has an opportunity to have his lawyers ask questions under oath about things that he as a lawyer could not discuss.
Yeah.
And now suddenly it would, be in the public record from the court documents. And of course he wasn't going to get deposed. I mean, it's just the stupidest thing in the world, but he has gone on with this, for months. And that's the thing that Trump does, right? Is he sues people to intimidate them and forces them to pay months and months of legal fees and then drops it out of the blue and is like, okay, we're done here. But the thing is now it sort of feels like the turnaround is fair play with Trump. Now he's the one who really has to deal with all of these lawsuits and all of these legal fees. And it's got to, like, he's starting to run out of cash.
Yeah, no, it's starting to catch up with him. Now, Will, you go back to your little text machine and ask Cohen if he's going to sue for legal expenses for a frivolous lawsuit, because can you just file a lawsuit? They go, oh well, we changed our mind. Yeah, no harm, no foul. Can you do that?
That is a good question because in sorry, I was actually doing it as you were saying. Sue for legal expenses.
Yeah, let's see if we get a response back on that, because
right?
Because it's always been my view that you file these, you better go through with it.
And Florida in particular, the thing is that they have the frivolous lawsuit laws too. I don't know what their slap suits are necessarily, but already there was the lawsuit that Trump lost when he sued Hillary Clinton and like 500 other people, and he and what's her name, his other lawyer, du jour, got fined like a ton of cash. I think it was almost $1 million.
Yeah,
so,
look, every I think it was Rick Wilson who said it, everything Trump touches dies.
Yes.
Or everyone Trump touches goes broke. Because today, the beautiful statement today, Mike Lindell, broke. We've lost everything, every dime. It's all gone. All of it, he said. Those are his words. We've lost everything. Every dime, all of it is gone. His lawyers are bailing on him, and he's still being sued by what, $1.3 billion by Dominion. Smartmatic is going after him for a huge amount of money. That guy, he better come up with a new gimmick besides a pillow and slippers.
Yeah, because basically it's going to end up being Smartmatic brings you pillows at the end of this thing. So Cohen responded, and so I said, are you going to sue him for legal expenses? And he goes, look at the last sentence of my quote, which is more to come. So pretty sure that that's an indication of yes.
There's your answer. And the thing is, the judge, and looking at what the judge did, with Trump, having to disclose all of the LLCs, basically lay everything out. I mean, do we now find out he's not as rich as he said he was, and he doesn't own half of what he claims he owns? And do we now find that it was all just a con, that all of it, that some of us believed it was from the beginning?
Exactly. Like, that's the thing, is I feel like we spent the first year of the campaign and first year of his presidency digging through all of these financial documents, and none of it really made sense to folks who cover this kind of economic issues. And for the biographers like Tim O'Brien and David K. Johnston, they're like, y'all, we've been doing this for decades. He ain't got no money. And interesting, it's one of the funny things that of all people, Joy Behar in The View talks about, is she's like, he didn't hate Rosie O'Donnell until she started questioning his wealth. The second she started questioning his wealth, it was like, he was on her. And that was the genesis of their feud.
Can you do that again? But here's the thing, and I guess this is the serious question then, because I've been saying from the beginning he's been a con man. I've believed he's been a con man all along. You've heard all of the stories back in 2015 and 16 about all the people that he stiffed, the bankruptcies, all this stuff. Will it matter to the faithful? I mean, is there an epiphany? Is there a light bulb moment? Do you think for some that they go, "Oh, I was conned"? Do you think that's possible?
Oh no! I mean, we were talking a little bit before the show about cultism, and the way that Cohen talks about, living life under the world of Donald Trump it's a lot like a cult, where you have this this personality, this this God that you're following around like an evangelical pastor, and it's that Joel Osteen kind of thing, and people flock to it. And so I don't know. I mean, it's the same thing with him. Like, he, obviously has his private jets and all of his fancy lifestyle, and he probably has more money than Donald Trump does too. And in the end, that doesn't deter them from him. I think what will change is one of my favorite things that happened today. My favorite piece of news, other than this, obviously, was Representative Moskowitz filed or sent a letter to the Palm Beach County appraiser and said, hey, I don't know if you noticed, but Donald Trump has been saying that his Mar-a-Lago property is worth like $1.5 billion. You assessed it at something else. Is it possible that maybe he should be paying a hell of a lot more in property taxes? And
look, I said that from the beginning. If these properties are worth what he says they're worth, why isn't he paying taxes out the wazoo on them?
Yes.
As any one of us would be.
And the thing is if you look at all of those documents, whenever his property taxes went up, based on the assessment, his lawyers were, his accountants and his lawyers were on it fast. They were just like, oh no, we dispute this. Mar-a-Lago isn't worth whatever it was that you said it was. It's actually worth a lot less. So our property taxes are going to be a lot less. And so it's like it's exactly what the lawsuit in New York is about,
right? Where
he's playing this game of, it's cheaper here, it's more there.
But here's the thing, and I'm going to defend him a little bit, because rich people get away with this all the time. This is rich group. This is a rich people thing. And the thing that infuriates me is, people would defend Trump. Well, he's just smart. No. This is what rich people get away with all the time. Trump has exposed it, and good for him. Thank goodness Trump has put himself out there to be exposed as the fraud that he is and the cheat that he is, so that maybe we can deal with it. For me, the thing that came out of this trial was his defense. And maybe you'll think it's as important as I do. He says, I can't overinflate my properties because I can always go to the Saudis and get what I want. And I'm going, wait a second. How is that possible?
Yeah.
And then what are you giving the Saudis so that they're giving you whatever you want?
Yeah, I mean, that's where this sort of goes from just a regular everyday rich dude who's bilking the system to, holy crap, did he just reveal that he has some sketchy relationships with the Saudi government and that they owe him money for stuff?
Yes. But here's the thing: we find out today. This is another one of those things, and I go back to something I've said a million times. In the Trump era, think about everything we know about Donald Trump. Think about everything that we've heard, all of the horrible stories, all of the, those soldiers are suckers and losers, and think about all of that stuff, and then imagine all the stuff we don't know.
Yeah.
So this story comes out today that he's with this Australian billionaire, and he's leaning in and whispering and telling him about our nuclear subs, and my mind goes to this place of are there any people working in Mar-a-Lago who aren't on some foreign country's intelligence payroll somewhere? Aren't spies for some foreign intelligence agency? Because national secrets are laying on tables in the bathrooms. He's whispering to people in the ballroom about our nuclear capacity. Really?
Here's the thing, though. They don't even have to have their spies placed in there as employees. They can just have some rando pay $200,000 for a Mar-a-Lago membership and then pal around with him all the time, and make friends with him and get him a little lubed up and be like, hey, you want some pie? You want to chat about nuclear secrets? Like, I mean, it's just, it's so absurd, but that's really what was happening. And we suspected as much, but now it really seems like he's kind of just dangling it out there for everyone to see.
What kind of pie?
One of the things, right? I'm sure he eats a lot of pie. I'm sure he probably eats the fried pies from McDonald's. Right. They don't have the actual fried one anymore, do they? They do the baked ones. Anyway, so the thing that I found the most interesting today is you made me lose my train of thought. Dang you. What were we talking about?
Spies at Mar-a-Lago on the foreign payrolls.
Oh, the thing that we found out today, and I think one of the filings from Trump's lawyers in Miami for the classified documents case, because they're complaining about how there's no secure facility for them to read stuff, and that's delaying things and yada yada. One of the things that I didn't know is that there are 3 documents that he had that are so secret that he can't even view them at a secure facility. He can only view them in Washington, D.C. And at that point, your mind is just reeling about what on earth was this document?
Yeah.
What were these things? What were they saying? And who was he giving them to?
No, and this is the thing. I go back to this story with this Australian billionaire. How many times has this happened? How many people has he, to butter up or to try and, get some kind of favor with? Has he just let stuff out? Or, he doesn't even care that it's top secret or classified because it doesn't matter to him. He's just blurting stuff out. This is why you don't give guys like that the nuclear football. You just don't do it. You don't give them the code. You don't do it.
How many people is he telling Mike Lindell this stuff, and is Mike Lindell then calling up, the Russians being like, hey, I'm in this bad lawsuit with Smartmatic and I need some money?
Yeah,
here's the secret I can give you.
But yet I hear the right wing, outrage machine going on about, Donald Trump was, he was tough on Putin. We know he's got stuff on Putin. You go, really? I think it's the other way around. It's kind of. I think Putin's got stuff on a lot of Republicans. Or why else would they be doing his bidding? I don't know if you saw the statement recently that he basically said the war would end in a week if they could cut off access to Western weapons because they're almost out of weapons. So you see the Republicans in the House going, no, we're going to cut off aid to Ukraine. I don't know. There seems like kind of a quid pro quo there.
It does. It sort of seems like Putin is just writing the press releases for them at this point. And people like Ron Johnson, especially, it's exactly like you say. What do they have on Ron Johnson? What the heck was he doing in Russia whenever he was visiting with Putin there? What videos do they have? Stay away from that vodka, man.
So let me ask you, with all the craziness in the House and all of the fun and entertainment, day 2 of no speaker vacation, Evidently now it's going to be retribution and vengeance. They threw Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer out of their offices. Now they're going after Matt Gaetz. They're going to Cawthorn Matt Gaetz, which couldn't happen to a better person. In fact, we can change the Cawthorn to Gaetz when he's gone. Any thoughts on what we're going to see coming? What the fun and entertainment's going to be?
So one of the first things that I thought when all of this was going down with Matt Gaetz is I was like, if John Boehner was there, Matt Gaetz would have been gone a long time ago. He would probably be in jail by now. Just because that's sort of the way that Boehner worked, is he would, if he didn't like somebody, he would find information about them out. And what was that one guy out of Illinois that had the sketchy real estate deals? He got rid of that guy really fast. And really, it's because Boehner was secretly basically passing around different pieces of opposition research to progressive news people.
Yeah.
And that was, how he got rid of folks. I don't think McCarthy, I can't decide if McCarthy either didn't care or if he's so aligned with Matt Gaetz that he actually supported half of the stuff that Matt Gaetz wanted.
Yeah.
Because that's the weird thing, is he's been kind of a nutter for a long time, and he's only been forced to moderate because it's just bad for him in PR terms.
Yeah. So last question. Speaker Trump, yes or no?
So here's the thing: is
a MAGA rally every day. It would be a MAGA rally every day, according to Marjorie Three Names. It would be the House of MAGA. Think about it. Could be fun. Could be entertaining.
Rule 26 of the Republican rules say you can't be the speaker if you've been indicted.
They can change that. They can change it. I got it on good authority. Real simple. They could change it if they wanted to. If they really wanted to, they could change it.
They could. They'd have to elect a speaker, change the rules, fire that speaker, and then elect Donald Trump.
Well, they got a temporary one. They got the bow tie wearing Wall Street.
Yeah. The only action that he can take is he can hold a vote for a new speaker. There's no other thing that he can do.
Well, we will see. We'll see how this. We'll see what happens. But I'm pushing for it. I want Speaker Trump. I think it would be a good thing for the Republican Party. Best thing they could do for themselves.
It's kind of the burn it all down.
Yep.
Method, where it's just like, here, let me just shove you off that cliff that you're standing on.
The dumpster's on fire. Let me just push it into the ocean.
Yeah, kind of. It really is. And you can just burn and drown out there by yourself. Have fun.
I was just going with drown, but you got the burn and drown. All right. Sarah, as always, great stuff. Thank you for the breaking news. I'll look forward to talking to you back here next time.
Oh, thank you. Have a good day tomorrow.
You as well. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out their website, rawstory.com. Find all the incredible work that she does, and I'm sure the breaking news. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was a day known in Hollywood as Black Friday. After World War II, the movie industry began to rake in profits. But they did not pass those profits along to their employees. 10,000 members of the Conference of Studio Unions were on strike. They were part of the Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners. They were also in a jurisdictional battle with the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or IATSE, over who should represent stage decorators. The strike wore on for half a year. The studios had more than 100 films backlogged and were able to wait out the strikers. But as the strike continued and the studios remained silent, pressure mounted. Despite the tensions between the two unions, thousands of IATSE members refused to cross the picket lines. On Black Friday, the strikers decided to concentrate their efforts at the Warner Brothers Studios gate. 300 picketers gathered to hold the line. Scabs, hired by Warner Brothers, tried to drive through the workers' picket lines to the studio. Variety accounted what happened next, writing, quote, "Strikers deployed from their barricades, halted non-strikers, and rolled 3 automobiles on their sides. By noon, reinforcements arrived from both sides. Firemen were called in to turn their hoses on the striking workers. Warner Brothers security deployed tear gas. Common for the time, accusations were hurled that the Conference of Studio Union strikers were communists. As a result of the strike, the Conference of Studio Union's employees were assigned to other jobs in the studios. When they refused, they were locked out. The union never recovered. The violence at the Warner Brothers Studios gate also helped to fuel the passage of the Taft-Hartley Act through Congress, which eroded union protections. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I mean, stop and think about it for a second. You know, all of the classified documents that found its way to Mar-a-Lago, all of the stories that we already know of Trump, you know, just telling stories, just being Trump, just being a good golf buddy, you know, trying to endear himself to his companion. And, you know, hey, you know, see, this is one of those things that I said from the beginning about the classified documents, and I still believe this. I know a lot of people say, no, he was going to sell them. No, he was going to do all this stuff. I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe I'm not ruling it out, but I think it's much simpler than that. I think it's, hey, look what I have. Look how important I am. Look at me. It's all about it's always been about his ego. It's always been a love fest about him. These rallies are all to feed his ego. It's not about the people in the crowd. Could care less about them. It's about his ego. And having these classified documents, having things that nobody else has, that's an aphrodisiac. That's his ED medicine that he snorts. Like Matt Gaetz, according to Mark Wayne Mullen. Don't know if he did it or not. According to Mark Wayne Mullen, allegedly. Saved myself from being sued. But this is one of those things where him having all of this information is dangerous to national security, and we've not had this in any other president throughout history. That we were concerned that, in his business dealings, it might be a good sales thing. If you've ever had lunch with a really slippery salesperson, you know how they like to build themselves up. That's how I see Trump. And are you surprised that he does this? No, I'm not surprised at all. Were you surprised that there were classified documents laying around on the table at a reception? No, of course not. He's careless. He's reckless. He's all of those things. Now, what the MAGA crowd will tell you is that's what they love about him. He's unpredictable. He's dangerous. Yeah, he's dangerous, all right. Dangerous to our national security. Because as I was thinking about this, you go, I wonder how many of our intelligence assets around the world have been murdered because of his loose lips. Because we'll never know. We'll never know how many CIA agents or people around the world, because they don't publish their names. There's just a star on the wall somewhere with no name attributed to it. It's just a story. Oh, someone was killed in a car accident on vacation. How many people has his incompetence and his narcissism, how many people have lost their lives because of it? So for all of those flag-waving, Jesus-loving, God-fearing American patriots, ask yourself that question. I'm curious the answer. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back.
Unprecedented and deeply alarming.
Scientists are freaking out about September's record heat and Antarctica's missing ice. Critical climate targets still barely within reach thanks to growth of renewable energy. Plus,
we will be bold. We will be radical.
Bold and radical. British Prime Minister cancels high-speed rail, expands offshore drilling.
All that bold, radical news and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
So I have a choice of electrocution or shock. You know what I'm going to take?
Don't care. Both sound good to me. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, the fallout from the summer that is apparently never ending continues today, and now there's concerns down in Antarctica?
Yes, climate scientists are freaking out a bit after the hottest summer in recorded history. Temperatures in September are even more abnormal across the planet. Preliminary data from Japan's Weather Service this week indicates September 2023 beat the previous warmest September by such a wide margin that climate scientist Zeke Housefather called it, quote, absolutely gobsmackingly bananas. NOAA scientists warn that global heat will keep rising as the El Nino weather pattern in the Pacific peaks early next year, and to, quote, expect more records to be set in the coming months.
I am expecting.
All of that heat has consequences, especially for wildlife that can't escape. In Brazil, more than 100 Amazon River dolphins were found dead in a remote rainforest lake amid record drought and record hot water temperatures that topped 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists are also freaking out a bit because Antarctica's sea ice just hit a new unprecedented record low by an astonishing margin, according to the National Snow and Ice Data Center, increasing concerns that it could be entering a state of accelerating decline brought on by man-made global warming and record warm oceans. It matters because Antarctica's sea ice helps stabilize its vast land glaciers that would raise global sea levels substantially. And sea ice influences the ocean currents that distribute heat, nutrients, and oxygen across the planet, supporting the ocean food chain. As New Zealand scientist Natalie Robinson warned in an interview with News Hub,
if we're going to change how the sea ice forms, we're actually changing some fundamental aspects of the global ocean system.
Oh, that's all.
In the UK, Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak last week watered down Britain's climate targets, bizarrely claiming that it was in the nation's best long-term interest. This week, Sunak announced he canceled a much-anticipated segment of a major high-speed rail project that would have revitalized northern England's economy and reduced air pollution. Then, Sunak approved a major new offshore oil and gas drilling project in the North Sea, ignoring warnings from scientists and the UN that countries must stop developing new fossil fuel resources to avoid catastrophic climate change. The move comes in advance of parliamentary elections and were broadly condemned even by Sunak's conservative predecessors.
What the hell has gotten into Sunak? And maybe I should say, who has gotten to Sunak?
Here in the U.S., Arizona's Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs said this week she is terminating controversial state-issued land leases that for years gave a farm owned by Saudi Arabia the ability to pump virtually unlimited amounts of the desert state's groundwater for free to grow alfalfa for export to Saudi Arabia. Worsening drought in Arizona has brought renewed attention to the issues of foreign-owned farms and unregulated groundwater pumping.
I guess it has.
Cue the right-wing outrage. The Department of Energy finalized new, upgraded energy efficiency standards for natural gas-fired furnaces, requiring 95% efficiency for non-weatherized gas furnaces and those used in mobile homes.
Take your dirty hands off my gas-powered furnace.
The department says the new efficiency rules will cut down on indoor air pollution and save consumers money on energy, collectively $25 billion over 30 years.
Stop saving me money and saving my life.
And finally, some encouraging news. Thanks to the rapid growth of renewable energy and electric electric cars around the world, the UN's International Energy Agency says we still have a chance of limiting man-made global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. However, to hold global warming in check, countries must triple renewable energy capacity, double the rate of energy efficiency upgrades, and cut methane emissions from fossil fuel production by 2030. The IEA says the methane solution would cost the oil and gas industry just $75 billion, or 2% of their profits in 2022.
So there's still a chance. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So with all the craziness going on, and look, we've got a house that's on fire. It's hard to focus on anything else, but the reality is we still have to focus on how do we move our economy forward and make it to where it works for average, everyday working people. And look, as I've said, we've got a Republican Party hell-bent on chaos. A shutdown is not too long down the road. No functional house to head that off. We got lots of problems. And a big part of that is, well, we've got an economy that seems rigged against average, everyday working people. That's why I've asked our good friend Kat Hadley to come talk with us. She's the director of the Great Economy Project. AmericanAgenda.com is their website. They're out there doing the education work of getting people to understand there is a possible better way. There are other alternatives. This isn't the only alternative. We can do better. Kat, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here again.
So where are we? What are we doing? What's the good news so far? I know you're out in Wisconsin. You're out in North Carolina. You're coming to Pennsylvania. What's going on?
So we have a lot going on. We just wrapped our education portion in Wisconsin, and out of our cohort, over 98% of people decided to stay and work on advocacy. And so how our program works is that we go in and we give people our view of the economy that is pretty much that it's rigged against the working class, that the wealthy aren't paying their fair share in taxes, and that there should be a livable minimum wage for everybody. So we talk about those issues, we bring in experts, and then we basically say, do you want to stay and help us work on these issues? So it's really great to see that in North Carolina and now in Wisconsin, we get these massive response rates to stay on and do something. So in Wisconsin, you're going to see some people start really moving and shaking on this issue, especially the minimum wage piece on the state level in Wisconsin. We're going to be back for training soon. And in North Carolina, that's looking like people, testifying in front of the House and the North Carolina House about different things. And they're at different fairs, just talking to their fellow citizens about these issues and trying to make a difference. And then on November 1st, we're going to be launching in Pennsylvania. We'll be in Mount Pleasant. So anyone's welcome to come out. It's totally free. You get free dinner. You get to learn about stuff. We have door prizes. It's real fun. So come out if you can.
No, that would be great. What you're doing is what I've been saying, for years has to be done. Activating, educating, engaging voters, getting people, to take ownership. Democracy, they say, is participatory. This is how you participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a lot of these people, because we go to smaller towns, we specifically target around 5,000 person towns, because the idea is if one person knows, 20 other people know. If you're a small town person, you might know that very well. But yeah, so, but what I love about this job is really showing people, like, you have a voice and that voice matters. And sure, this is going to be hard work and we might not get there overnight, but politics is one of those things, like, once you turn on to politics, it's really, that's it. Like that's how I fell into political work was, seeing a problem and realizing, oh, somebody should say something about this. And
understanding that you can make change. I mean, we've been sold on this idea that you can't fight City Hall, that, the big moneyed interest, they control everything. And I say, look, sure, they've got all the money, but we've outprocreated them. There are more of us. We can vote. We can, while we still can, because I fear we're heading towards a period where maybe we might not be all able to vote. But while we still can, we still have the ability to outvote the moneyed interest.
Yeah. Well, and I always tell people, a lot of my friends, I'm 35. And so there's a lot of younger folks that I hang out with. And I always tell them when they're like, well, this is hopeless and I'm walking away. I try to challenge that as like, who do you think benefits when we think this way? Who's benefiting from us just saying, okay, well, it's too hard, so we're walking away? And then also, as somebody that's done a lot of activist work, I did food stamp expansion in Michigan when it was Republican controlled and won on everything we were fighting for there. I've done childcare expansion on campuses, all types of stuff. And the thing is, you can win and you can fight City Hall, and I have. It's hard work, but you can do it. So yeah, I just always think about who's benefiting from when we feel like nothing can happen, because it's rarely the people doing the good work.
And you focus on one of my most important issue, and it's not the sexy issue that everyone gets all riled up about, but our tax code is so badly rigged. The game is so badly rigged that the wealthy and the powerful get all the benefits. And I think George Carlin said it the best. The rich get all the money, do none of the work. The middle class does all of the work, pays all the taxes, and the poor are there to scare the hell out of the middle class. So they keep showing up to the jobs. That pretty much sums up our economy.
Yeah, and if we even have a middle class at this point, we have one, but it's a sliver of, when I was a kid, there was a solid middle class. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I think we're like pre-pandemic, we were the 8th most economically segregated city in the United States. And there's no way it hasn't gotten a lot worse. And, the only people I know that still live around here, because I worked in food service for a long time. I was like a high school dropout, went to school a lot later. But like the only people I know are people that maybe got a house, something like that, and I think it's sad because it impacts our cities and our worlds and our communities. But the other thing too there is that this economy is not working for anyone. And once you really break into that tax code, it's sickening how rigged it is. And just America deserves a lot better. And so that's really what we're trying to tell people is I think in America, there's a big onus on personal responsibility. So you may feel like the system is rigged, but you feel like at some point I made this mistake and now I'm in this financial situation. But the reality is, I meet people say like, well, maybe I want to be a millionaire someday. And I just, I tell them, I'm like, the way our economy is headed, I'm not going to lie to you, that probably will never happen for you. It won't happen for me either. But, we have to fix this system because it ties into all of our other stuff. If we have the wealthy paying their fair share, what will the world look like? And one thing we try to challenge people on when we talk about a living wage, because people get, have ideas, and there's been a lot of propaganda around minimum wage. One thing I ask people is like, what if, Richland Center had a $20 minimum wage? What would that look like for your community? And people start thinking about not just who's impacted, but the whole city. Like, what does that look like? Because that means more small business. That means better everything. All of our systems are being paid into. Everyone benefits when we do these things, when we raise the wage.
No, this is why I think the fight with the big three and the UAW is so important. You're talking about sharing the profits of labor in a more equitable fashion, so that it does actually trickle down like it used to when my grandparents were alive. Not since we've been trickling down, but pre-trickle down, before they told us things would trickle down, it actually did. Once they said, hey, it'll trickle down, it kind of stopped. But you're right. We paid into Social Security. We paid into unemployment. We paid into Medicare. The more people earned, the more taxes they paid to the local government so that you got more services. The machinery was working better when people had higher wages and were able to pay higher taxes. And that is not a bad thing.
No. And I think, it's like, imagine what our communities can be when people can afford to do things. And I will say, I'm a library board proud elected Ann Arbor Library Board trustee in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And our library was able to unionize, and they were able to talk about, like how having a living wage is so important there, because so many people can't even afford to live in the city and have to travel in, and how does that impact things like climate change? I mean, these things are all connected. So I think it's, well, there are tons of priorities we can look into. A living wage is massive. And then it's just somebody that worked on minimum wage. And this was back 10 years ago. But I remember working the hardest hours of my life, like 40, 60 hours on my feet, just coming home exhausted and not being able to pay rent. And there's no dignity in that. And I truly do believe like America's worth fighting for, and America where people can pay their bills is the America that I believe in. So that's why I do this work.
No, that's spot on. I say every time a new president comes into office, it's my hope that they will be the one who returns reward to work. And Joe Biden has been that guy for me so far. All the things that he has done with the Department of Labor, the National Labor Relations Board, the talk and the support for workers, that is incredibly important. If only we had a House of Representatives capable of passing some kind of legislation that could make organizing easier and could help an actual, push to rebuild our middle class. Boy, would that be something. Instead, we've got a giant chaos show of children running amok. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Kat Hadley. Kat is the director of the Great Economy Project. AmericanAgenda.com is the website that you can check out the work that they do. Let's go back to this for a minute, because, I love the work that you guys are doing. And in fact, in North Carolina, you went into a small town, Whiteville, right?
Yep, Whiteville, North Carolina.
And you went in there, red hat, blue hat, didn't matter. Right, left, didn't matter. Democrat, Republican, didn't matter. It's about the issue. And as I say, the frame is not red hat, blue hat. It's hard hat. We've got to rebuild this country. And that's what I love about what you guys are doing, that it's not about, which team you're on. It's about how do we make lives better. And I think if we did more of that, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just, being overly optimistic, maybe we would actually accomplish some things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we focus on the issue, and this is the thing, I think that as somebody that I've done a ton of across the aisle work, and people always ask me, especially when they're on one extreme side or the other, like, how do you get them to talk to you? And I'm like, I talk to them like they're human beings, and I talk about my issue passionately. And I think that, for the most part with this thing, people feel this like to their core. They've felt the decline of their financial power. They felt that shrink. And so when you come in and you kind of disarm them by saying, listen, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I don't want to talk to you about any of this other stuff. I want to talk to you about money, and I want to talk to you about solutions we think we have, and we want to see if you're interested in helping us. And I think when you do that, people are willing to listen, at least hear you out. They don't always 100% agree, but often they do. And, it also creates a system where, we have in North Carolina, the two women that run the program there. I mean, they're like our biggest helpers down there. One's a Republican and one's a Democrat, and they work together all the time. And we're in a group chat, and it goes beyond, I just think we've gotten so far away from each other. And I think there's valid reasons for that. And I'm not going to discount some of those reasons. I understand some of them, but I think when we can learn ways to talk to each other, that's just really important and really special. And so I'm really grateful to be a part of that. And you see it again in Wisconsin, and hopefully we're seeing it again in PA. And so it does bring me some hope that people are willing to, and you see people willing to help others. We have people in the program that are making good money, but they realize, my neighbor isn't, and I want them to be okay, or my community could be better because of this. And so they get involved. And so that's excellent to see.
No, isn't that the story of America, supposedly? Is that what we're led to believe is supposed to happen?
Yeah. I mean, and I think it still can, but it's scary, and I think, in North Carolina, we had Brittany go and test. She was one of our original cohort members, and she went to testify because, they passed this new law around, she went to protest against it and to make a comment against it, but with the redistricting maps that you can't FOIA anything they're talking about. And so she went and just talked about how this will impact advocacy, because, where's the control lever for any accountability with any political power when politicians are writing the maps and, they're the ones in charge of these things. And then to counteract that FOIA law, they're also saying we're going to, start this GovOps program where we can investigate whoever we want. I mean, on the state level, there's some really scary things happening on a national level. So I think having these people come together and say, hey, wait a minute, this is something I don't really normally pay attention to, but I know this will impact us and I want to fight back against it. Like that's, I think, just really important to have going on in general from both sides of the aisle. We got to hold these politicians accountable on both sides.
Yeah, no, to unpack what you just said, because I want to make sure that the gravity of what you just said is gotten, that you cannot file a Freedom of Information Act on what they're doing. So there's no way to have any oversight by citizens over what our elected officials are doing in North Carolina. And they're setting up basically a secret police force to be able to go after any advocacy group. So basically your citizen lobbying could be, criminalized.
Yeah. And that's horrifying, right? Like, I mean, and just like, and there's we need people to be running for office to be aware of these things, and I think that the scare tactics, and they already exist. Like when you go to make public comment, everything's intimidating and it's all on purpose, right? And so, what we're trying to really tell people is, that this is your government too. Whenever I get upset about stuff, which is often, but it's also like, this is also our country and I'm not going to let them get away with this. They can pass legislation, but I'm still going to be here and I'm always going to fight back against this because I do love America. And I think this is absolutely corrupt and wrong. And I think that it's worth fighting for, and that goes back to that limit when we say, well, there's nothing that can be done now. There absolutely is stuff that can be done. Is it going to be hard? Yeah, but it's still worth doing. North Carolina is worth fighting for. Pennsylvania is worth fighting for. Michigan is worth fighting for. Every state is worth it. And
Amen.
People are worth it.
Amen. AmericanAgenda.com, the website. We'll get links out on social media. Kat Hadley, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Love to have you come back, especially when you come to Pennsylvania, and share with us what's going on there. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Kat is the director of the Great Economy Project. Again, AmericanAgenda.com, the website. Quick break, right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people on the talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, rich guy, Jim Justice, governor of West Virginia, running for Senate, oddly enough. Evidently, the federal marshals have been instructed to seize a 2009 Bell helicopter that belongs to a company owned by Jim Justice and his family because, I guess, unpaid debts. And this is one of those this is one of those weird kind of things where you go, another one of the rich guys showing us how they evade paying taxes. He doesn't own the helicopter. His company does. But he gets to use it whenever he wants. And this is one of those things that as working people, we don't really quite grasp. So when the rich dad, poor dad guy says, rich people don't pay taxes, he's not lying. He's being very honest. When Donald Trump said, I'm smart, I don't pay taxes, he's being honest. They're going to screw the system every chance they can because they lobby for it. They spend a lot of money to rig the game so that they benefit. And as I said the other day, my grandfather always said, if a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you don't need something, you better spend two to get it, because they get return on investment. They know that the couple of $1,000s that they hand out in campaign donations is going to come back to them in multiples, because the tax code has been rigged so badly. And this has always been one of my main issues, because I think if you have a more fair economic distribution, if your work and your labor is compensated fairly, and you make a decent living, a lot of our problems begin to go away. If we don't have gazillionaires who have such outweighed power that, well, they can take on we the people, I think you have a different society. But what we've done is Reagan forward, we've rigged the game to allow the very wealthy and powerful to get away with whatever they want. Which is why this thing with Trump is so important. Why the fact that, the Justice Department and our justice system is going after a former president because of all of the crimes. And I remember back in 2015, I talked about this extensively, because we had a bunch of people on over that year who had been screwed over by Trump and his businesses. We had contractors who came and said, we did all this work, and they basically stiffed us and then sued us and offered us pennies on the dollar, and we had to take it because they would just tie us up in litigation. That was his MO, and it was amazing to me that anybody would actually work for the guy. But it was one of those things where you didn't know about it until he came out, because there was always gag orders and there was always threats of being sued if you told anyone, because that's what rich people do. And that's what, someone like Trump did. And I remember going, I don't know why this guy's throwing his name into the ring. At some point, all of this stuff has to come out. Now, again, I go back to 2015 with my 2015 brain, thinking that the American people were the people that I thought they were, in 2012 or 2008 or 2004, that the kind of scandal, the kind of corruption, the kind of graft that we saw out of him would turn people off. But oddly enough, in 2016, it actually turned people on. It actually got people to go, yeah, he's a smart businessman. He knows how to game the system. He's going to do it for us. And I don't know how you made that turn. I get, okay, he's a smart business guy who knows how to screw people over and screw the system and benefit himself. I get that. Completely understand that. I don't know how you make this turn that it's somehow going to benefit the rest of us. I'm still mind blown at that magic trick, at that act of mental gymnastics that you would think that this guy who has never shown any inclination of helping anybody but himself, magically, overnight, coming down an escalator, now makes him benevolent. It's really quite curious to me. And maybe if we still have the ability to think freely in 50 years, maybe if we're not a fascistic dictatorship in 50 years, maybe they'll write about this era. And maybe they'll have a better answer. Because I get the idea that, like my family, they believed that the jobs were going to come back. They believed that they were going to recreate those union jobs and that, even though there was no basis for that whatsoever. Other than, the analogy I always use is, a drowning man, when you throw him an anchor, will reach for it. Because it's, who knows, potentially could help. So I find it very interesting that this is where we are. Also, very interesting, and this is where everything that Trump has ever touched, everybody who's touched it has been burned. And just look at the wake of misery that he's left. The fact that Mike Lindell, who I guess at one point someone said was a billionaire, has lost it all. It's all gone. Gone. That to me, just remarkable. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your podcast, you will find ours. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was a day known in Hollywood as Black Friday. After World War II, the movie industry began to rake in profits. But they did not pass those profits along to their employees. 10,000 members of the Conference of Studio Unions were on strike. They were part of the Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners. They were also in a jurisdictional battle with the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or IATSE, over who should represent stage decorators. The strike wore on for half a year. The studios had more than 100 films backlogged and were able to wait out the strikers. But as the strike continued and the studios remained silent, pressure mounted. Despite the tensions between the two unions, thousands of IATSE members refused to cross the picket lines. On Black Friday, the strikers decided to concentrate their efforts at the Warner Brothers Studios gate. 300 picketers gathered to hold the line. Scabs, hired by Warner Brothers, tried to drive through the workers' picket lines to the studio. Variety accounted what happened next, writing, quote, "Strikers deployed from their barricades, halted non-strikers, and rolled 3 automobiles on their sides. By noon, reinforcements arrived from both sides. Firemen were called in to turn their hoses on the striking workers. Warner Brothers security deployed tear gas. Common for the time, accusations were hurled that the Conference of Studio Union strikers were communists. As a result of the strike, the Conference of Studio Union's employees were assigned to other jobs in the studios. When they refused, they were locked out. The union never recovered. The violence at the Warner Brothers Studios gate also helped to fuel the passage of the Taft-Hartley Act through Congress, which eroded union protections. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
What amazes me about outbreaks of bribery among high government officials is not just the level of greed involved, but that the take is often so cheesy. For example, there seems to be no end to the ongoing saga of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's peddling his position and prestige to right-wing corporate titans for what? Free rides on their jets, golf outings, and assorted baubles. He's supposed to be an impartial justice, but he consistently supports rich interests who are picking up his tabs. We taxpayers provide $274,000 a year in salary to Thomas. Why wouldn't he buy his own baubles and protect a smidgen of his judicial integrity? Now comes New Jersey's Senator Robert Menendez, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who has been oddly insistent on giving U.S. weaponry and financial aid to Egypt's repressive military dictatorship. Why? Because Menendez has sunk butt deep into influence peddling, using his position to advance Egyptian interests. In exchange, Egyptian agents have blessed him with huge wads of cash, gold bullion, a Mercedes-Benz convertible, and a no-show job for his wife. Oh, they also delivered an air purifier for his home. Seriously? An air purifier? That's a mighty cheap sellout. Yet, what a priceless symbol of the whole stinky deal. Meanwhile, Menendez says that the donations are unrelated to his honest concerns about our Mideast foreign policy. He proudly asserts that his senatorial assistance is just the, quote, normal work of a congressional office. This is Jim Hightower saying, sadly, he's right. Most Senate offices today routinely do official favors for moneyed interest in exchange for millions of dollars in bribes. But that's such an ugly word, so they call the big money payments campaign contributions. Then they get indignant when we call the system corrupt, but that's what it is.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I was reading a story over at the Ohio Capitol Journal, and they're talking about how the Ohio governor and Republicans in Ohio are about ready to major overhaul of the Ohio education system, going after the Department of Education there, going after the State Board of Education, basically hatchet job, major overhaul, they said. Now, a judge said, hold the phone. There's a restraining order because they want more, slow this down a little bit. Governor's saying, no, we're going. And his response was, there's certainly a potential for chaos. No, I think that's what they want is chaos. Because I believe, and I still believe this to my core, the goal is always destroy public education. That's what happens when these people get their fingers on the education system. It's all about destruction. And I look at, states like Iowa, who are doing their foolhardy best to destroy what was once, the gold standard in American public education. And here to share some thoughts on just how bad things are in the state of Iowa, I've asked our good friend JD Schulten to come talk with us. He's an Iowa state representative. JD, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me back on. And it's absolutely despicable to see where we're at in public education here in Iowa compared to where we were. When I graduated high school, we were first in the nation in education, and now we're at best middle of the pack. And now we passed school vouchers, and where I live in Sioux City, Iowa, our school board said that it's an automatic 8% cut to public education because of that. And you look at the majority of rural schools, they don't have an option to send their kids somewhere else to a private school. And so it's so frustrating to see what the Republicans and what this governor is doing to such a strong foundation and such a pride that we had when it came to public education. And
the thing for me, JD, is they're not even trying to hide it anymore. I mean, before it used to be, we want to give people an opportunity. We want to give poor people a chance. And now they're just right out in front. They are foolhardy. We want to destroy public education.
Right. And what we're seeing here, to me, public education is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter your background, doesn't matter the zip code that you grew up in. You have a chance to better your life because of public education. And so that's why I'm so passionate, and why we should be so passionate about funding public education. But it's absolutely ridiculous. And what we're seeing here in the state of Iowa is that the majority of kids who were the rich kids who are already going to private school, they're the ones who are going to get a lot of the money, and it's not going to the poor kids or anything like that. It's so frustrating that this is just another example of
the windfall.
The wealthy are going to continue to have breaks while the working class gets left behind.
Yeah, but that's not new. That's always been the gig, because the vouchers, and I still remember, before Mike Fulmer got into trouble here in Pennsylvania, he was advocating a voucher bill. And I remember asking him, going, look, the Abington Friends School in Philadelphia is about, $40,000 a year for kindergarten. If I get one of these golden tickets, if I get one of your vouchers, I get one of these golden tickets, can I send my kid to Abington Friends School, and will it cover? Oh yeah, it covers all the costs and transportation. The answer is no, it doesn't. It covers what my school district would have paid for my kid to go to that school, which is about $12,000 or $13,000. I don't have the other $27,000 to make up, so it was just a windfall for people who are already sending their kids there.
And that's what we're seeing in Iowa, is the majority of private schools up their costs this year, because they were only charging $3,000, and now they can get up to $7,000. So they doubled their prices.
Yep.
So then in the state of Iowa, we're not allowed to audit the system. It was the most fiscally irresponsible bill Iowa has ever seen, because we don't know if it's going to be positive or negative. There's no reporting on it, no auditing. And then you look at down in Florida, where you see like the parents are buying like PS5s and just
big screen TVs.
Right. It's a joke. And when that money could be spent to help the communities and investing in public education, where every kid has the chance to succeed.
I said the other day on the show that, the push had always been to destroy public education. And I know people years ago, and I've been talking about this for at least a decade now, that the goal, especially for the homeschool community, would be to, hey, we pump out a bunch of kids, especially the quiverful folks. We punch out a bunch of kids, and the school pays us to homeschool them because the money that they get, every kid gets, comes in a backpack. So if you go to a charter school, you go to a private school, you go to a homeschool, it gets paid to that entity. I've now taken it to the next step of going, because we're destroying child labor laws, that now we're going to take that money not for homeschooling, but because work will eventually be considered education, we're going to pay employers to abuse children as cheap labor, and that will be the wet dream wish list item of the year for corporate America.
I mean, child labor is absolutely disgusting, and to see what happened in the spring, both the child labor law that was here in Iowa, but even before that, the federal report from the Department of Labor that said, I think it was over 12 meatpacking plants in 8 different states. There was over 100 kids working night shifts and overnight shifts as cleaners, and absolutely just disgusting. These kids should be in school. They shouldn't be working overnight shifts. And but collectively, I think the whole the report ended up showing that collectively they only got fined about $1 million. So to these companies that are making billions of dollars, these monopolies, these huge multinational corporations that have a stranglehold of our agricultural system, and just to slap them with $1 million fine, they'll pay that in a heartbeat and do it all over again the next month.
Yeah, see, I can solve our child labor problems in one single page piece of legislation, and I wouldn't fine anybody a dime. You would never pay a fine in my world. But if a child you have any child labor violations in your factory, in your meatpacking plant, the CEO goes to jail. Simple.
Exactly.
I mean, that's
Absolutely.
how it should be. You're the top guy of the company. You should know what's going on. If you're allowing kids to be put in dangerous situations, you're breaking the law, you're responsible. No fines, no slaps on the wrist, no, oh, hey, post a notice. No, you go to jail.
It makes sense to me. It's so the corporation or the corporate crimes that just, it seems, never go accounted for. We need to start changing that. And I am grateful for the FTC and the DOJ, and they're starting to crack down on some of this stuff. And it's going to be interesting to see some of these lawsuits, the Amazon lawsuit and the Google lawsuit. It's antitrust, but it also has a form of accountability at the executive level as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting for a very long time, and I've been saying, who's going to be this generation's Teddy Roosevelt? Who's going to be the trust buster? Who's finally going to start breaking up some of these monopolies because they're getting too big? I mean, I was talking to somebody about inflation today, and they were going, it's all Joe Biden's fault. I'm going, no, it's not Joe Biden's fault. It's those 192 people who sit on the business roundtable who have been raking in obscene, massive profits, who have been gouging our eyes out for all these years. It's their fault. They're the ones who have caused this massive inflation. In fact, they've actually put a number to it. 52% of the inflation is because of corporate profits, because they're stealing from working people and giving to rich people. And that, to me, is something we should really be upset about.
Absolutely. We got workers all across the nation fighting for better wages when the CEOs are making just millions of dollars. You have the companies bragging about record profits all across the nation, and yet folks are not getting a livable wage. And then you also have prices. I mean, the pandemic absolutely put a spotlight on this, especially with our meat. So meats cost the most they ever have for consumers. Workers were working in dangerous situations for low wages. Farmers are getting squeezed. And so I'm trying to reach out to farmers, to consumers, to workers, and say, hey, we need to get together because we're getting screwed here.
Now, when we were in Sioux City and we met up with you there on our Working Class Heroes tour, you talked about, a lot of stuff that, I hadn't even really thought about. The fact that Iowa, I thought Iowa was part of the breadbasket of America that fed everyone. And you said that the majority of the crops that, and maybe I got this wrong, but like the corn crops don't actually go to feeding people.
No, 90% of the food Iowans eat it's imported, and most of it comes from California. And so there's a lot of the right wing loves to bash California when it comes to agriculture and stuff, but you don't crap on where you eat. And so but to me, that's also a huge opportunity where what we can do in Iowa is really create regional food systems. And that's something I'm really trying to push and work with. I was blessed enough to go to Farm Aid a few weeks ago. And they had farm tours, they had a conference, they had a couple social events, and then they actually had the concert, which was phenomenal. But coming out of that, I was there with legislators in other Midwestern states, and just talking about like the need to decentralize some of our food systems so we're not so vulnerable, because food security is national security. And so if the supply chain, like we saw during the pandemic, gets in a vulnerable situation, we could be in huge trouble. I mean, we saw what happened with the baby formula. That could happen very easily in milk, with how concentrated we are. And so to me, everything starts with antitrust. It's not the final answer, but it's the first step. And I'll say this about President Biden. He's the first president in my lifetime that he has addressed competition and done something about it in our economy, and with that executive order in his first summer in office. And then you have FTC, the chair, Lena Khan, doing a great job. You have Jonathan Kander at the antitrust division of the DOJ. They're pushing the envelope, and I love seeing it. I wish there was more. I wish the USDA could do more as well. But we're a step in the right direction, but there still needs a lot more work to do.
No, and this is important, and this is tangible stuff that could make people's lives better. But our mainstream corporate controlled media is never going to talk about, our food supply in a way that makes any rational sense. Look, Pennsylvania, I think it's either the first or the second largest industry is agriculture. You wouldn't think of that about Pennsylvania, but you drive through the center of this state, it's all farmland. And you go through the Midwest. We should be producing all of our own food. We shouldn't be importing. At least I don't think so. And there's got to be better policies to get us to that point.
Not only are we importing, we're importing massive amounts of meat. And just think of how much meat we can produce ourselves. And so some of the trade laws are just trade agreements are just weird and bizarre. And I think we need to reestablish what we can do ourselves and what we need to do in order for some of this trade. But it just, one of the other parts of it that I don't think gets discussed enough, and you mentioned corporate media doesn't tend to do this at all. We talk about country of origin labeling. Right now, a cow down in Brazil can be born down there, raised down there, harvested, brought up here in package and just repackaged. And because it's repackaged in the U.S., it can legally have made in the USA or some sort of USA stamp on it. And it's defrauding consumers. It's hurting our farmers and ranchers here. I mean, it used to be the law of the land, and then it just in 2015, it just they didn't renew it. And so I think that's just absolutely just awful for our farmers and ranchers, and also awful for consumers. And it's time we start addressing some of this stuff.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We're put into this red hat, blue hat fight. Rural versus urban. People who live in cities aren't supposed to care about the people who live on farms. And I keep saying, we're all interconnected. If farmers are getting screwed over, that means consumers in urban areas are going to get screwed over. There's a natural kind of symbiotic relationship that should be there. But again, we're pitted against each other to where we're not allowed to talk about these things.
Well, and that's where, if we have a regional food system and more focus on the regional food system, I think that's where we have our city-rural communications and just like cohesiveness is when we have that, and we have more appreciation for local foods, and it makes us healthier. We had a state legislators had this call about this new pill that's supposed to help with obesity, and I was like, yeah, that's great, but like let's go on the other side of the problem where we have healthier food that we can that make it cheaper and easier. Like I played baseball in Europe this summer. I was shocked at how healthy and how cheap the food was over there, and they prioritize that. Instead, for us, we're prioritizing a lot of other things that makes us unhealthy.
So how do we get to that? How do we get to a place where we I don't know, act a little bit more like Europe and have healthier food?
Well, I think the first start is with the Farm Bill. We there's a great farmer out of Indiana, Greg Gunthrop. He had a great thing at the Farm Aid. He was honored at the Farm Aid, and he had a great speech where he said, I'm sick and tired of the Farm Bill. What we need is a food bill. And I think he's exactly right. He has kind of bucked the trend of, he's one of the few independent hog producers left in the country, and he has a special kind of hog that he helps raise, and it goes all over the country. And he does decent for himself, but he found this nice little niche in it. But that's a problem, is like he's an outlier. We need him to be in the way he does things. We need that to be more common. And so to me, it's let's create that infrastructure. Let's start having government contracts saying, like, when it comes to with our food supply, that a percentage of it has to come from local food. Once you create these infrastructure, then the market's going to take off. Like, the want and the desire are there. People want to know where their food comes from, and they, if the cost wasn't an issue, they'd prefer local.
Sure.
And so let's start subsidizing that rather than subsidizing getting cheap food. And like, here's an example: 60% of the apple juice consumed in the U.S. comes from concentrate from China. And just think of the environmental impact of bringing all that into the U.S. and then shipping it all across the U.S. when almost every state, there's thousands of apple orchards all across the nation. We could be producing our own local apple juice, but that's the way it is because of
that's how corporate America wants it.
Exactly.
No. This is one of I go back to what I said earlier. Who's this generation's Teddy Roosevelt? How do we start breaking up these monopolies? Last question I've got for you. Completely different topic, because I wanted to have a little time to talk about the insanity in the House. Any thoughts about what's going on in D.C. with the children in the House?
It just goes to show how they don't give a crap about the Republicans when they're in office, how little they care about running the government. And you look at, it goes back to 2017 and when they passed they had the House, they had the Senate, and President Trump was in office. And when they had a chance to pass anything they wanted, what did they pass? The main thing they passed, they couldn't get a lot of stuff done, but the one thing they passed was a tax break for the huge corporations and the super wealthy that were permanent tax cuts, and the working class tax cuts were temporary. If there's nothing more than those two things that they care about their rich donors, and they don't care about us, and they don't care about governing the government and making it a functional government. To me, that's it's clear as day.
Yeah. No, spot on. JD, as always, I appreciate you taking time for us. Great stuff as usual. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, our good friend JD Schultz. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1983. That was the day that Lech Walesa was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his work founding the Solidarity Union of Poland. The son of a carpenter, Walesa worked as an electrician in a shipyard. He was fired from his job for working to organize a union. Solidarity grew to include 10 million Poles.
In 1981, Walesa was arrested and detained for nearly a year. He did not attend the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony because he feared he would not be allowed back into Poland once he left the country. His wife, Danuta, accepted the prize on his behalf. The speech he sent to the ceremony served as an inspiration to Polish Solidarity members and workers around the world. He wrote, "Let my words convey to you the joy and the never extinguished hope of the millions of my brothers, the millions of working people in factories and offices associated in the union whose very name expresses one of the noblest aspirations of humanity. Today, all of them, like myself, feel greatly honored by the prize. With deep sorrow, I think of those who paid with their lives for the loyalty to solidarity, of those who are behind prison bars and who are victims of repression. I think of all of those with whom I have traveled the same road and with whom I have shared the trials and tribulations of our time. We are fighting for the right of the working people to association and for the dignity of human labor." Walesa and his fellow workers did not give up on the dream of solidarity. They continued to organize against the communist government for the rights of workers. In 1990, Walesa was elected president of Poland.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So Tracy sent me an email. And I can't read it verbatim, but because there's some colorful language, which I appreciate. I appreciate colorful language. I do. She's questioning my want of Speaker Trump. Why in the blankety blank blank would you want Donald Trump as Speaker? Well, first and foremost, I said from the beginning, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There aren't going to be enough Republicans who are going to step forward and say, yeah, that's our guy, because they're going to have to go back home and run for re-election having done that. And look, as Marjorie Green said, as Marjorie Three Names pointed out, it will be a MAGA rally every day. It'll be a rally every day. It won't be governing. There'll be no agenda. It'll be propaganda every day. It'll be well, a giant S show. Even more than it is now. And look, it's only temporary. He doesn't want to do it full time. So it's only a temporary fix. And Republicans need, actual leadership. And I don't know who that leader is going to be, because understand what the speaker's leadership power is. And McCarthy was their big fundraiser. If you lose your big fundraiser and you don't have someone to replace it, you got problems electorally. And this is where the Republicans really are going to have some problems, because they just kicked their biggest fundraiser, right where. Now, who steps into that? Jim Jordan? Really? One of the most unlikable guys in Congress? Seriously? With the baggage he's got? With all of the stuff that will come up around his time at Ohio State, and all of the sex scandal and all of that? Or Steve Scalise, the guy who said, and I don't even understand this, the guy who said he's David Duke without the baggage. I don't know what that means. Does that mean he's a racist white supremacist that people don't know yet? He's a racist white supremacist. I don't even know what that means, and why you would say it. Bizarre. But that seems to be where the Republican leadership could be chosen from. Now, there may be someone. I know there's some other people who are trying to do some back climbing. But I don't see any solution real soon. And for me, look, Tracy, the reality is, you put Trump in there, you've got massive chaos. And the American people will see massive chaos. Maybe it takes that kind of a shock to the system. Maybe it takes the kind of, just out and out insanity for people to finally wake up and go, this isn't normal. This isn't right. As Daniel Ziblatt, the professor of government at Harvard University, was quoted saying, if you want to know what it looks like when democracy is in trouble, this is what it looks like. It should set off alarm bells that something is not right. We should all be on high alert. That's the reality. So that's why, Tracy, but I appreciate the email. And if you want to email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I answer all emails personally. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.